Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mirz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today 2 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch on Daf Tzadik Aleph Amud Beis Siman Shin Gimel Sif Yud Zayin. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanisunim Batzara Ubashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem V'yaitzia mitzara l'rvacha me'afelu la'oiro mishibud l'geula hashta b'galo v'zman kariv and emar amen. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema from Moshe Meir ben Esther Fradel, Yitzchak ben Tzion ben Dusha, Tzvi ben Leah Miriam, Chava Hadassah bas Rezel Serel, Devara bas Shosha Bina, and Rivka bas Shira Leah. They should have a refuah shalema b'sar shar chayil Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should also please protect and watch over all of our brothers and sisters that find themselves in harm's way. B'chol makom shehem. Says the Mechaber Sif Yud Zayin. Yesh oisrim lahavi mafteach afilu b'chatzar habayis. There are those that aser, and if you take a look at the Beragola, this is brought down in the name of Rabbeinu Yerucham, who brings it down in the name of the Ramban. It's also a Rashba, a Magid Mishnah. So there are those that prohibit carrying a key even in a chotzer. What do we mean over here by a chotzer? We mean a chotzer that doesn't have an eruvei chatzeros. So let's take this piece by piece. First of all, we're talking about somebody carrying a key. How is he carrying the key? So this Sif Yud Zayin is coming on the heels of everything else we've been discussing here in Siman Shin Gimel. We're talking about somebody going out carrying something derech malbush. He's carrying it affixed to his garments, and he's trying not to carry it, he's trying to make it into a tachshit or into a malbush. Now, we learned earlier that when it comes to transporting a key, you're not allowed to transport a key by just taking a key and affixing it to your garment. You're not allowed to transport a key just by taking a key and hanging it on your belt or somehow sticking it to your belt. We said that that's usher, because that's considered a masui. The key is not a tachshit, the key is not a malbush, it's not doing anything for you, so that would definitely be usher. What we saw was mutter, was if you could take the key and you could turn the key into a functional part of the belt. So let's say you have a way of taking the key and making the key part of the buckle so that the key is the tongue or the pin of the buckle, then the key becomes the actual belt. It actually becomes part of the belt. Then we no longer look at it as a key, we look at it as a belt. It's a very interesting belt. It's a belt that's actually able to unlock a door, but it's a belt. So we learned earlier, in a nutshell, that there is a way that it's mutter to transport a key by elevating the key either to a tachshit or to a malbush, but to just take the key and hang it from your belt or somehow, take Velcro and stick it on your belt or put a pin on the back and stick it onto your garment, that we learned is usher. Now, says the Mechaber over here in Sif Yud Zayin, in Shin Gimel Sif Yud Zayin, Yesh oisrib lahavi mafteach afilu b'chatzar habayis. There are those that say that if you're transporting the key in a way that would be forbidden in Rishus HaRabim, right, just hanging it from your belt, not only is it forbidden in Rishus HaRabim, it's even forbidden in a chotzer. What kind of chatzar? So the Mishnah Berurah tells us in Eis Cotton Nun Vav B'chatzar Bayis Hainu Afilu B'chatzar Hamu'ureves. This is even in a chatzar that has a proper Iruvei Chatzeros. So let's get clear over here what we're speaking about with a chatzar. When we talk about a chatzar, we're talking about an area that really midaraisa is considered a Rishus HaYachid. I'll fall back on my default example, which is always the bungalow colony. You have a bungalow colony that has a field, and going around the field there are 20 units. So you have 20 bungalows that are encircling a common area, a common field. And around the bungalow colony there's a fence, there's a gate going around the bungalow colony. Midaraisa, this entire bungalow colony is one Rishus HaYachid, because it's got a gate surrounding the whole thing. So really, this bungalow colony is a Rishus HaYachid, and really, you should be allowed to carry in the field, you should be allowed to carry from the field into the bungalows, you should be allowed to carry from the bungalows out to the field. everything should be mutter, because the bungalows are Rishos HaYachid, the field is a Rishos HaYachid, the whole thing is a Rishos HaYachid. But Chazal came along and they made an Issa D'Rabbanan. Chazal said that this field, because this field is serving 20 different houses, it's serving 20 units, the field feels and looks like a Rishos HaRabim. It's a common area. It serves 20 different entities, 20 families that live in 20 different houses. So the houses seem like Rishos HaYachid. The common area feels like a Rishos HaRabim. Said Chazal, if we're going to allow people to carry from the bungalow to the field, from the field to the bungalow, or even to carry Dal and Amos in the field, people are going to make a mistake, and they're going to come to carry in a real Rishos HaRabim, because this feels like a Rishos HaRabim. So what did Chazal say? Chazal said you're not allowed to carry there, unless you make it a Ruvei Chatzeros. What's it, a Ruvei Chatzeros? Everybody, all the 20 bungalows, everybody who lives in them, they all have to get together, they all have to chip in to challah. The challah goes into one of the bungalows, and now that bungalow becomes everybody. Since everybody has a share of the food that's in that bungalow, that unites everybody into one halachic entity. Now we no longer look at the field as serving 20 individual entities. Now we look at the field as serving one unified entity. Now the field no longer feels like a Rishos HaRabim, now it becomes like a Rishos HaYachid, and now carrying is mutter. So now, if we put all of this together, what's the Mechaber saying here? The Mechaber is saying, we learned in Siman Shin Aleph that there's a way that it's mutter to transport a key into Rishos HaRabim, if you make it a functional part of your belt. There's a way that's usher to carry a key to Rishos HaRabim. If you just take the key and you hang it from your belt, that would be usher. It's not a takshid, it's not a malbush. Says the Mechaber here in Shin Gimel Sif Yod Zayin, in the case that's usher, to just hang a key from your belt, there are those that say, not only would it be usher to go out to Rishos HaRabim carrying the key in that way, it would even be usher to carry that key in a chotzer, and says the Mishnah Berurah, it means a chotzer that has an erev. Even that would be usher. Let's go weiter, and we'll see the explanation in the Mishnah Berurah. Ki im biyadoi. So yesh oiser lavi maftech afilu b'chatzer habayis. There are those that say that in a way that it's usher to carry a key affixed to your garment, it would be usher even in a chotzer. How could you carry the key? Ki im biyadoi. You can only carry the key holding it in your hand. Sounds a little counterintuitive, right? Carrying it in your hand, that's real carrying. Carrying it affixed to your belt, at least you're trying to turn it into a malbish or a takshid. But no, it's actually the other way. To carry it in your hand in a chotzer that has an erev, that will let. To carry it affixed to your belt in a chotzer with an erev, that we won't let. Avaloi b'chagarosai. We won't let you carry it hanging on your belt. Why? We're afraid if we let you walk out of the bungalow into the chotzer with the key on your belt, then the next step is going to be you're going to walk from the chotzer into the real Rishos HaRabim with the key on your belt. Are we worried that if you hold the key in your hand, you're going to go out to Rishos HaRabim holding a key in your hand? No, that we're not afraid of. And like the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, if we were going to start to worry that when somebody's holding something in his hand, he might go out to Rishos HaRabim holding it in his hand, we're going to have a new halacha. You're never allowed to carry anything in your hand on Shabbos, because you might go out to Rishos HaRabim. That we're not afraid of. But if you're going to take a key and you're going to attach it to your belt, and you're going to walk out to the chotzer, then when you don't even realize that you're carrying anything. When you're holding something in your hand, you know you're carrying something. When it's strapped to your belt, you don't even know that you're carrying anything. So if you're going to want to go from the chotzer to the Rishos HaRabim, you're not going to say, oh, I got to take the key off my belt. You're just going to go. So there are those that say that therefore it's usher to have the key attached to your belt, even in a chotzer, even though the chotzer has a proper Iruvei Chatzeres. Now we'll see in the Mishnah Berurah that this Sif Yud Zayin actually serves as a very good hakdama to Sif Yud Ches. But let's take a look here in the Mishnah Berurah's Katan and Vav, B'chatzer Habayis. What kind of chatzar is the Mechaber talking about? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu afilu b'chatzar ha'mu'ureves. This means even a chatzar that has a proper iruvei chatzeros. V'deyazu, and this opinion, this yesh oisrim of Sif Yud Zayin, v'deyazu, hi ha'deya shniya de Sif Yud Ches shebesamuch. This is actually the second opinion of three opinions that we're going to see in the coming Sif in Sif Yud Ches. Shesvirala, who holds the koil she'ostru lotzeis by derech malbush berishos harabim. Anything that we say is osir to go out wearing into a rishos harabim, osir leilech by afilu babayis ubechatzar hamureves. The second opinion in Sif Yud Ches is going to be a very, very chamur dika opinion. That opinion holds all of these halachas that we've been learning. All the things that you're not allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim with while you're wearing them. So all the types of jewelry that we said a woman's not allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim. The key on the belt that we said you're not allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim. The second opinion holds anything that you're not allowed to go out wearing to Rishus Harabim, you're not even allowed to wear it in your house or in a chutzner that has an erev. Why? Because once you put it on, we're afraid you might forget about it and you might go out to Rishus Harabim. Ois cotton on Zion. So how could you carry the key in the chutzner or in the house? Ki im biyadai, only in your hand. Hainu. The explanation of this is if we're going to let you carry it in your hand going out to the chutzner, we're not afraid that by us allowing you to carry a key in your hand in the chutzner, you might go carry it to Rishus Harabim. Dim kain, because if we're going to start having such a fear, if we're going to start having a fear that if we allow you to carry something in your hand in a house or in a chutzner with an erev, you might come to carry it to Rishus Harabim, so then we're going to have a new halacha. Not allowed to hold anything in your hand on Shabbos, not even inside your house, because once you pick something up in your hand, you might go out to Rishus Harabim. So obviously, says the Chavetz Chaim, there is no chashash. The Chachamim never made such a chashash. They never made a gzeira based on that if you hold something in your hand, you might go out to Rishus Harabim. Aval, however, b'masha natoloi loitzioi derech malbush, dahainu kisher toli b'chagoyrosai. But if we would be matter you to go ahead and go out to the chutzner or go around in your house carrying a key hanging from your belt in a way that's also to go out to Rishus Harabim, matzayu, then it would be very common. When somebody is going out dressed, he's going to forget, and he's going to go anywhere that he's used to going. After Rishus Harabim, he'll even go out to Rishus Harabim. He's not going to take it off in the middle. So in other words, what the Mishnah Berurah is saying is like this. We have to differentiate between the two cases. Are we going to make a gzera that you're not allowed to hold something in your hand? Because if you hold something in your hand, you might go out holding it in your hand to Rishus Harabim? No. When a person's holding something in his hand, he knows he's carrying something. He knows he's not allowed to carry out to Rishus Harabim on Shabbos. So before he goes out of the bungalow colony, out into the road, out into Rishus Harabim, he knows I'm carrying something, I got to put it down. I can't carry it out to Rishus Harabim. But if we're going to allow somebody to take a key and hang it from his belt, now you're not allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim that way, right? But if we're going to allow you to hang the key from your belt inside your house, and we're going to allow you to have the key hanging from your belt when you go from your house into the chutzner, and we're going to allow you to walk around in the chutzner with the key hanging on your belt, then if somebody says, hey, Yankel, let's go for a walk. So then when you walk out of the gate of the bungalow colony, are you going to remember that you have a key hanging on your belt and you're going to take it off? That, the Chazal said, at least this Yesh Oisrim says that we have to worry. That we can't be sure that you're going to remember to take it off, and therefore it's aser. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, and this is where I said Sif Yud Zayin is a great hakdama to Sif Yud Ches. And this is going to be the explanation of the second of the three opinions that we're going to see in Sif Yud Ches. That's very machmer. Shesvirla, who holds the chol tachshit she'asru laseis b'il rishus harabim derech malbush. Any kind of tachshit that we have learnt, you're not allowed to go out wearing into rishus harabim. Asur lehiskashit by gam b'bayis. You're not allowed to wear it even in your house, ubechotzer, or in a chotzer that has an eruv. So that's going to be the second opinion. Now let's go take a look at Sif Yud Ches. And by the way, it is here in Sif Yud Ches that we are finally going to tackle the elephant in the room of why it is that nowadays, despite all the halachas that we've been learning in this fascinating Siman Shin Gimel, how it is that women go out wearing jewelry. How is it that women go out on Shabbos out into the street wearing jewelry? What's the explanation? So today in Sif Yud Ches, we're finally going to come to that answer. Says the Mechaber Sif Yud Ches, bottom line, Tzadik Aleph Amud Beis. Kol she'asru chachamim lotzei spoil rishus harabim. Any type of tachshit, any kind of jewelry, all of these things that we've been learning about, that the Chachamim said you're not allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim wearing them. Really, they're tachshitim. Really, midaraisa, you're allowed to go out with them. But the Chazal came and the Chazal said that there are different concerns. There's a concern, for example, dilmul shalfa or machavia. Maybe a woman will take off a piece of jewelry to show it to her friend, and she'll end up carrying it Daled Amos in Rishus Harabim. Says the Mechaber here in Sif Yud Ches, Kol she'asru chachamim laseis b'il rishus harabim. Any kind of tachshit where the chachamim said you're not allowed to go out to the rishus harabim wearing it, aser laseis b'il lechatzer she'ena mi'ureves. You're also not allowed to go out with it into a chatzer that does not have an eruve chatzeres. So again, the chatzer min HaTorah is a rishus hayachid. That bungalow colony is surrounded by a gate. Min HaTorah, it's a rishus hayachid. Midrabanan, you're not allowed to carry in that kotzer unless you make it a ruve chatzeres. Here, the Mechaber is talking about a kotzer she'ena mu'ureves. The 20 families came up to the bungalow colony for the summer. Nobody made an eruve chatzeres. So right now, they think they made an eruv, right? That if there are any gaps in the fence, they put up lechis and they made a string. Really, that's not called an eruv. The lechis and the strings, those are not really called an eruv. That's a mechitza. That's when you make the two lechis and the string on top, that's making a tzuras HaPesach. That's halachically closing something off with a mechitza. That's not an eruv. Eruv is the eruv chatzeres. So people go up for the summer to the bungalow colony and they make sure that there's a good eruv around the bungalow colony. Yeah, that's step number one. Step number two is now you have to make it a ruve chatzeres. So here, the Mechaber in this first opinion is talking about a chatzer that's eina meureves. It doesn't have an ruve chatzeres. Says the Mechaber, Kol she'asru chachamim lotzeis b'il rishus harabim. Anything that the Chazal said you're not allowed to wear and go out to rishus harabim, asur lotzeis b'il chatzer she'eina meureves. You're also not allowed to go out with it to a chatzer that does not have an eruv chatzeres, because midrabanan you're not allowed to carry in an eruv that in a chatzer that doesn't have an eruv chatzeres. If there's no eruv chatzeres to the bungalow colony, you're not allowed to carry anything from the bungalow into the chatzer, from the chatzer into the bungalow, or Daled Amos in the chatzer. So if you're not allowed to go out with it to Rishus Harabim, you're also not allowed to go out with it in the chatzer she'eina mu'ureves. Chutz, with the exception of, says the Mechaber, mikovel upeya nochris, with the exception of the kovel, which was a little woolen cap that we learned about earlier that the women would wear, or a peya nochris, or some kind of a wig, some kind of braided hair that they would put on top of their head. That you're allowed to go out with. The Hainu, the Mechaber actually defines the peya nochris, klias seyar, this was braided hair, shekala b'saich sa'ara, that she would braid on top of her hair. It's a wig. So that's the first opinion. First opinion in a nutshell, the Mechaber says, if you're not allowed to go out with it to Rishus Harabim, If you're not allowed to go out wearing something to Rosh Hashanah, you're also not allowed to go out wearing it to a chotzer that does not have an eruv chatzeros, with the exception of the kovel and the pei nochris. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katnum Ches. Let's say by lechotzer. Hainu mi bayis lechotzer. What does the Mechaber mean when he says you can't go out to the chotzer? He means you can't transfer it from the bungalow into the common field. That's going from the bungalow, which Rishus HaYachid, to the field, which is also a Rishus HaYachid, but it feels like a Rishus HaRabim. V'hu adin, same halacha would be, shaloi lehiskashet ben b'chotzer gufa kisheina mu'ureves. Not only are you not allowed to take this piece of jewelry that you're not allowed to wear in Rishus HaRabim, not only can't you wear it when you go from the bungalow into the field, you also wouldn't be allowed to put it on in the field and walk Daled Amos in the field. Because the same way you're not allowed to carry something Daled Amos in Rishus HaRabim, midaraisa, midarabanan, you're not allowed to carry something Daled Amos in a chotzer she'eina me'ureves. Mishum dedamya l'Rishus HaRabim, because it feels like a Rishus HaRabim. Aval lahoitzi l'chotzer ha'mu'ureves. But according to this first opinion, if the bungalow colony made an eruv chatzeros, so you want to wear the necklace from the bungalow into the field, and the bungalow colony has a gate around it, and they made it in a Ruvei Chatzeros, shari, that would be mutter. The Choshkei Babayis, certainly in the house, you want to wear the necklace in the house. According to this first opinion of the Mechaber, this would be 100% mutter. This is the opinion of the Rif, the Rambam. So this is opinion number one. Opinion number one, we're going to see, is like the middle ground. Opinion number one, yes, there are types of jewelry, there are types of tachshitim that Chazal said you're not allowed to wear them in Rishus HaRabim. Even though midaraisa, no problem, it's a tachshit. But midarabanan, you're not allowed to wear it in Rishus HaRabim. Why? Dilma shalfa machavia. You might take it off and show it to somebody. How about to go to a chotzer that doesn't have an eruv chatzeros? The first opinion says if you can't take it to Rishus HaRabim, if you can't go with it in Rishus HaRabim, you also can't go with it in a chotzer she'eina mu'ureves. But a chotzer mu'ureves, a chotzer that has an eruv chatzeros, or certainly in the house, according to the first opinion, that would be mutter. Chutz mi kovel ois katan tes. The Mechaber said, with the exception of the kovel. What's a kovel? Hanu kippah shel tzemer, that's the small woolen cap, shebesiv gimel, that we learned about in Siv Gimel. V'hu adin itztama hakasav sham, also the felt cap, the itztama that we learned about over there, that we said you're not allowed to go out to Rishus HaRabim, but to an eruv that doesn't have, to a chaser that doesn't have an eruv, according to the first opinion, you could. Why? The reason why the Chachamim, according to this opinion, allowed a woman to go out with a kovel and a pei nochris to a chotzer that doesn't have an eruv, why did they allow that? Kadei shalei tiskav al baila, so that she should become repulsive, so to speak, to her husband. Her husband shouldn't look at her and feel that she doesn't look pretty. And like this kashet klal, if a woman's not going to be allowed to wear anything to beautify herself, then Chazal were concerned that her husband is going to look at her and find her unattractive. And that Chazal never want. Chazal want that a woman should always be attractive to her husband. So Chazal they relaxed their Issa D'Rabbanan, and they said, even though we treat a chotzer without an eruv like a Rishus HaRabim, and therefore all of the tachshitim that we said you can't go out to Rishus HaRabim, you also shouldn't be allowed to go out to a chotzer she'eina mu'ureves, but the kovel and the pei nochris, epis, we're going to allow the woman to wear so that she should be attractive to her husband. The pei nochris is this braided hair, talush, it's not attached to her head. Shetzeivarta, she piles it up, so to speak. It's like a braided thing, so it's like a pile of braids. Al sa'ara milamala, she covers her hair with it. Kedei sheteirah bala seir, so that she should look like she has hair, aka a wig. Okay, so that was opinion number one. Now we go to the second line in the Shulchan Aruch, middle of the line. V'yesh oimrim. Then there is a more machmir opinion. Beis Yosef quotes this from the Rashbam, Mordechai. V'yesh oimrim. There are those that say, much more strict, the kol she'asru lotzeis by, anything that Chazal said you're not allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim wearing, afilu lehiskashe boy babayis aser. You're not even allowed to wear it in your house. The choshkein lotzes boy lechatzar hamu'ureves. Certainly you can't go out with it to the chatzar, even if the chatzar has a proper eruve chatzeros. So this second opinion is very machmer. This second opinion says, if Chazal said you can't go out to Rishus Harabim wearing it, you can't even wear it in your house, you can't wear it in a chatzar, even if the chatzar has an eruve chatzeros. This is the halacha that we learned in Sif Yod Zayin, that there are those that say that the key hanging from your belt, not only you can't go out to Rishus Harabim, you can't even have that key on your belt in a chatzar, even if it has an eruve chatzeros. You can't even have that key on your belt, even in your house. Because once you put it on, then you're going to go wherever you're going. It's time to go to shul for mincha. You're going to go out to Rishus Harabim, and you're going to go out carrying it that way. And therefore, Chazal extended the Isser even inside a house, and even in a chatzar that has an eruv. Again, chutz mikavel upei anachris, but again, they made an exception for a woman for the kavel and the pei anachris, shaloi tiskana al baila. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah cut in Samach Aleph, chutz mikavel, the mutter b'kol chatzar. Again, even this second opinion says that a kavel, a pei anachris, a woman could go out with it into any kind of chatzar. A chatzar mu'reves, chatzar she'ena mu'reves, kedei shaloi tiskana al baila v'chanal. V'ayin b'bir agra shemitzadid kedei rishayna. Take a look at the Bir Agra. The Bir Agra says the Mishnah Berurah leans towards the first opinion. That only extends the Isser to a chatzar that does not have an eruv. But a chatzar that has an eruv, or in the house, over there you could carry. Okay. Now, let's see the third opinion. Third opinion is the most makel opinion. Third line down, about 2/3 of the way through the line, says the Mechaber v'yeshomer. Then there are those that say, and this is Rabbeinu Tam, very important for us, this Rabbeinu Tam. V'yeshomer, there are those that say, Sha'kol mutter lotzes boy b'chotzer, afilu eino me'ureves. There are those that say, Shitas Rabbeinu Tam, that even the things that Chazal said you're not allowed to wear to Rishus Harabim, the key on the belt, the jewelry, even though Chazal said you can't wear it to Rishus Harabim, you could wear it in a chatzar, even a chatzar she'ena me'ureves, even a chatzar that does not have an eruve chatzeros. So Chazal look at that chatzar like a Rishus Harabim. They midrabanan, they treat it like a Rishus Harabim. But to the chatzar, you could go out wearing the jewelry. You could go out with the key on your belt. Certainly in the house, you could go out with you could go with the jewelry. You could go with the key on the belt. That's the most makel opinion, is the Rabbeinu Tam. Now, let's get to the elephant in the room. Says the Mechaber. V'ha'idna. Nowadays, Nashi Didan, our women, Nagu Lotzeis Bechol Tachshitin. They're noyig to go out with all jewelry. And says the Mishnah Berurah cut in Samach Beis, Nagu Lotzeis, Hainu Afilu Berishos Harabim Shalanu. Says the Mechaber, nowadays our women, they go out wearing everything. We just learned the whole complicated Shin Gimel over here. This kind of piece of jewelry, that kind of piece of jewelry, this kind of pin, that kind of pin, this kind of cap, that kind of cap. Says the Mechaber, nowadays the women go out wearing everything, all jewelry. And says the Mishnah Berurah, when the Mechaber says that they go out, he means not to a chatzar that has an eruv. No, they go out to Rishus Harabim Shalanu. Even our public streets, they go out wearing jewelry. And that's what we know, right? Women don't hesitate. They wear necklaces, they wear bracelets, they wear everything. They wear brooches, they wear everything. And they go out even to the street on Shabbos. Oh, now the Mechaber, having pointed out that that's the minig nowadays, now the Mechaber kind of searches what's pshat in the minig. Says the Mechaber weiter, 4 lines down. V'yesha amru, there are those that say, this is Tosfos, Rosh, Aran, V'yesh amru, there are those that say dimidina asuros. There are those that say that really this is usur. It's really usur. Ella, but shekevin shelo yishmu, since they're not going to listen to us. If we tell them that they can't wear jewelry, they're not going to listen. Mutav shiyu shagigais val yihim izidos. Really, what they're doing is usur. It's an issa d'Rabbanan. They're not allowed to go out wearing these things. Siman Shin Gimel. Not allowed to go out. But if you're going to start telling women that they can't wear any of their jewelry, they're not going to listen. So better, don't tell them. Let them go out. They're a shogig. They don't know that it's usur. Don't tell them, because once you tell them, now they know. Now they know if they go out wearing it, they're amazed. So that's shot number one in the Mechaber. V'yesh, however, let's go to the second explanation here. Torah brings this down in the name of the Sefer Trumas. Says the Mechaber, V'yesh shalom do'aleim schus. There are those that are malamet schus on the women, and they say no, they're not doing an isser. Loimar shehein noegais kein al pisvara achroina shekasafti. Really, pshat in why the women wear everything is because we paskin like the most kula dikashita, like the Rabbeinu Tam, the third opinion of the three opinions that we just learned here. Sheloi asru lotzeis petachshita lachotzer she'ena mi'ureves. Right? The Rabbeinu Tam said that the things that Chazal said you're not allowed to wear, like the jewelry, you have a chotzer, but the chotzer doesn't have an eruve chatzeros, that you could go out wearing the jewelry. Even though Chazal usually treat a chotzer without an eruv like a Rishus Harabim, but not in the context of this halacha. This halacha, Dilma, Sholfa, Machavya, you might take off a piece of jewelry and show it to somebody. A chotzer, really a chotzer, min HaTorah, is a Rishus HaYachid. Okay, we require an eruv chatzeros. You didn't make it a eruv chatzeros. All right, we're not going to ask her wearing the jewelry in that kind of a chotzer. Okay, how does that explain that our women go out to the street? Continues the Mechaber. V'hashta de lestlon rishus harabim gomor. Many Rishonim, even, are of the opinion that our streets are not bona fide rishus harabims. In order for a street to be a rishus harabim, it has to be similar to the Machaneh in the Midbar, to Klal Yisrael's encampment in the Midbar. What does that mean? Well, it has to be a wide street, so it has to be at least 16 amos wide, be'erich 30 feet wide, and it has to be a hiluch shishim ribu. It has to be a street that 600,000 people traverse on a daily basis. If it doesn't have those requirements, it's not a real Rishus Harabim. So says the Mechaber, there are those that say that nowadays we don't have a bona fide Rishus Harabim. Okay, if so, says the Mechaber, Havalei kol Rishus Harabim shalanu karmelis. That means that all of our Rishus Harabims are not really Rishus Harabims. Midaraisa, they're not really Rishus Harabim. What are they? They're not a Rishus Harabim. They're not a Rishus HaYachid. So, midarabanan, they're a karmelis. What does that mean? Midarabanan, you're not allowed to carry in them. But midaraisa, you are. Well, if so, then really halachically, what we're calling a Rishus Harabim is the same as a chotzer that doesn't have an eruv, right? A chotzer that doesn't have an eruv, Chazal treat like a Rishus Harabim. And the third opinion that we saw in the Mechaber above said that a chotzer that doesn't have an eruv, you're allowed to wear jewelry. Well, a street that's not a bona fide Rishus Harabim is a karmelis. What does that mean? Carrying in it is an issa d'Rabbanan, just like carrying in a chotzer without an eruv is an issa d'Rabbanan. So if it's mutter to wear jewelry in the chotzer that doesn't have an eruv, it's also mutter to wear the jewelry in the street that's only a karmelis. So that's the second shot that the Mechaber has. Why our women wear jewelry? You know why? Because they're going out in the street. The street's not a real Rishus Harabim. So okay, we have Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says you're allowed to wear jewelry in a chotzer that doesn't have an eruv. No, what's the difference between a chotzer that doesn't have an eruv and a street that's not a Rishus Harabim? A chotzer that doesn't have an eruv is an issa d'Rabbanan. A street that's not a real Rishus Harabim is also an issa d'Rabbanan. It's a karmelis. So if you could go out to the chotzer without an eruv, you can go out to the street. V'dina kechotzer she'enim ureves umuter. So the Mechaber has given us two explanations so far why it could be that our women wear jewelry. Says the Rama Haga, v'yeshaim ramoy tam lahater. Then there are those that give another explanation for the heter, and that is the akshav shchichi tachshitin. Nowadays, Baruch Hashem, we live in more prosperous times, and women have jewelry. Jewelry is not uncommon. They wear jewelry even during the week. And therefore, we don't have to worry about Dilma Shalfa or Machavia the way we had to back in the day. Back in the day, women only wore jewelry on Shabbos. And jewelry wasn't common at all. So if a woman went out on Shabbos, she was eager to show her friend, look at the bracelet that I got. But nowadays, bracelets are a dime a dozen, necklaces are a dime a dozen, women wear them even during the week. So what's the big fear? Dilma Shalfa Machavia on Shabbos. So that's the Ramah's additional pshat why women could wear jewelry. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah over here. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Sabach Beis, Nohagu Lotzeis. Like we said, our women are noyeg to wear jewelry out on Shabbos. Hainu afilu b'rishus harabim shalanu, even in our public streets. Va'achakach, after the Mechaber points out that that's the minig nowadays, Chayzer HaMechaber leva'er oidois haminig hazeh. Now the Mechaber sets out to explain why the minig is that way. D'yesh sha'amru de bedina asurais, and as the Mechaber says, there are those that say that really me'ikar adin this is aser, because they reason. Even according to the Mandi Amar that says that you're allowed to wear jewelry in a chotzer that doesn't have it Ruve Chatzeros, Haloi Rishus Harabim Shalanu, but our Rishus Harabims, Afiluim Neymar De'ena Lov Din Rishus Harabim, even if they're not bona fide Daraisa Rishus Harabims, Machma She'en Shishim Ribu Baikin by B'chal Yom Kedikle Midbar, because they're not traversed by 600,000 people on a daily basis. Haloi Loi Grial Kalpanim Mikabel Shem Izman Hashas, but it's at least a Carmelis. We don't find anybody who says it's mutter in a Carmelis. In other words, what the Mishnah Berurah is saying is like this. Really, to explain the second explanation of the Mechaber, I gave you a very beautiful rationale explaining how our Rishus Harabim is the same as a chotzer that doesn't have an Erev. A chotzer that doesn't have an Erev, according to the Chazal, is treated like a Rishus Harabim. To carry in it is an Issa D'Rabbanan. Our public streets, according to the Mandi Amar, that our public streets are not bona fide Rishus Harabims. Why? Because they're not traversed by 600,000 people on a daily basis. So that's also an Issa D'Rabbanan. So, the public street is an Issa D'Rabbanan. The chotzer without an Erev is an Issa D'Rabbanan. According to the Rabbeinu Tam, who says that you're allowed to wear jewelry in the chotzer without an Erev, it's very easy to extend that and say that you're also allowed to wear jewelry in our public streets because they're both Issurei D'Rabbanan. That's the second explanation of the Mechaber. But the first explanation of the Mechaber doesn't hold that way. The first explanation of the Mechaber says, guess what? Me'ikar adin, it's taka officer what they're doing, but they won't listen to us. So better we shouldn't tell them. They should be a shaygig, not amazing. What's that rationale? What does that first explanation hold? Why don't they agree with what I just said? That l'chayra, the chotzer without an Erev, and the Rishus Harabim, our Rishus Harabims are the same. The answer is because they're not really the same. You're right that they're both only Surei D'Rabbanan, right? But think about it. The chotzer that doesn't have an Erev, my bungalow colony analogy, that is a bona fide Rishus HaYachid, Midaraisa. It's surrounded by a gate. Midaraisa, it's a bona fide Rishus HaYachid. Chazal came and Chazal said, we're going to treat it like a Rishus Harabim Midrabanan. That's the chotzer without an Erev. The public street is not a Rishus HaYachid. The problem of the public street is that it's not a Rishus Harabim, right? The public street is not a Rishus Harabim. It's not a bona fide Rishus Harabim because you don't have 600,000 people traversing it on a daily basis. But it's not a Rishus HaYachid either. So it's more chamor. We're going to treat it more strictly than we would treat the chotzer without an Erev. That's why the first explanation of the Mechaber says the women that go out with the jewelry, they're doing an Isser. That's Asr. Even according to the Rabbeinu Tam, that says you could wear the jewelry in a chotzer without an Erev, but you can't wear it in a Rishus Harabim Shalanu. That's more chamor. That's the first opinion. That's the first explanation in the Mechaber. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, V'yeshalim duschus is the second wide line in middle of the line, at least in my print. V'yeshalim duschus, but then we have the second opinion, the second explanation of the Mechaber. There are those that give our women more credit, and they say, the keved the hashta left on Rishus Harabim klal akama paiskim. Since, according to many paiskim, we don't have bona fide Rishus Harabims, v'leka lemigzar otu Rishus Harabim, and therefore there's no room to make a gzera and say, you can't carry in a Carmelist because you might come to carry in a Rishus Harabim. What Rishus Harabims? We don't have Rishus Harabims. Dam yahai Carmelist shalonu le'inyan zelech chasser she'enim u'reves v'sharia. The second explanation equates our Rishus Harabims to a chasser without an erev, puts them on the same level. They're both only Yisurei D'Rabbanan. The Carmelist is not more chomer. The only reason to make the Carmelist more chomer is in a day and age when there are real Rishus Harabims, so then you're going to make the Carmelist more chomer, because you'll turn around and you'll say, we have to ask carrying in the Carmelist, because if we allow you to carry in the Carmelist, you might come to carry in a bona fide Rishus Harabim. But when you don't have bona fide Rishus Harabims, there's no room for such a gzera. Zeu bir divrei Shulchan Aruch lahama'ayin bebeis Yosef av shahaloshon dochuk ktsas. Okay, before we go weiter in the Mechaber, to make sure that we do an adequate job of slaying the elephant in the room, I want to read to you from the Aruch HaShulchan. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, V'hinei kvar nisayru kadmoinim. Our earliest Achrayim already struggled with this question, maybe even Rishonim. Alma, for what reason, Velama, and why? Nashi didan yoitzais b'chol tachshitein l'rishus harabim. Our women go out with all of their jewelry to Rishus Harabim, ve'ein moiche biyadan, and nobody objects. Ube'emes, yesh shekasvu she'asurin. There are those that say that it's taka aser, right? That was the first explanation of the Mechaber. Yesh shekasu shasurin. However, kevin shelo yishmu lanu, since they won't listen to us if we tell them that it's aser, mutav shiyu shoygigos v'al yihim ezidos. It's better that they should do this b'shoygig without knowing that it's aser, and we shouldn't tell them, and then they'll do it b'mezid. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, v'chalila loymar kain. That's the Aruch HaShulchan. He says, Chalila loymer kain. How can you say such a thing? Chas v'sholem. To say such a thing about our women, that if we would tell them not to go out in jewelry, they would go out on Shabbos, and b'mezid, they would do something that's also. Says Aruch HaShulchan, Chalila loymer kain. I couldn't say such a thing, because the Mechaber brings it down. I'm reading from Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says, Chalila loymer kain. V'lachein, therefore, Heschilu rabbi seinu l'chapes alein schus. Therefore, our Gedolim have searched to find a schus for our women to explain why they do what they do. V'yesha kasvu, there are those that write, shetafastu le'ikar shitas Rabbeinu Tam Zal, that we accept as halacha the shita of Rabbeinu Tam, shebesif hakoidim, that he explained, the Aruch HaShulchan earlier, da'akol kekovel, that everything has a din of a kovel, and therefore you're allowed to go out, women are allowed to go out even to a chotzer without in a ruve chatzeros. They're allowed to go out with all their jewelry. Ve'etzleinu leka Rishus Harabim. Remember that we don't have real Rishus Harabims. Urechayve shalanu havin kekarmelis. Our streets are only a Carmelist, they're not a real Rishus Harabim. And even though you could bring a very strong raya from the Gemara that a Carmelist, which is not a real Rishus HaYachid, is treated in a more strict fashion than a chotzer that doesn't have an erev, because the halach is that if somebody chas v'sholom has a fire, Chazal say he's allowed to take his belongings from the house and bring them to the chotzer that doesn't have an erev, l'chotzer she'enim u'reves v'loy l'karmelis. But he's not allowed to bring stuff from his house into a karmelis, into a public street that's not a bona fide Rishus Harabim. So you see that the chotzer, that the Carmelis is more chamor than the chotzer without an erev. That was back in the day when they had big streets. They had streets that were real Rishus Harabims. So Kamalis, Dam Yosel, Rishus Harabim, Chas Shenim Ureves. Avalin, the Shelim, Rishus Harabim, Shavadim. Okay, so the Aruch HaShulchan so far gave us, in reality, the second explanation of the Mechaber. He said, we paskin like Rabbeinu Tam. And since we paskin like Rabbeinu Tam, that you're allowed to wear jewelry in a chutzah without an erev, you're also allowed to wear jewelry into our streets, because our streets are not real Rishus Harabims. Now he asks a kasha on that, because he says, you have a very strong raya from the Gemara, that our streets, even though they're not bona fide Rishus Harabims, they are treated more chamor than a chutzah without an erev. He brings a very powerful raya to that. But he says maybe that was only back in the day where it was common that the city did have streets that were bona fide Rishus Harabims. So since the city had streets that were bona fide Rishus Harabims, so the streets that were not bona fide Rishus Harabims were treated more chomer than a chutzah without an erev. But the Aruch HaShulchan says, nowadays, meaning in the Aruch HaShulchan's days, the Shtetlach didn't have real Rishus Harabims. Now the problem is, nowadays, you live in New York City, we do have real Rishus Harabims. Okay. Says Aruch HaShulchan weiter. V'adayin eina maspik. We still don't have a solid answer how to slay the elephant in the room. Tezeh boni ala shita da'achshav les lana Rishus Harabim. Because first of all, this explanation is built on the notion that our public streets are not real Rishus Harabims, because they're not traversed by 600,000 people on a daily basis. But there are many people who don't agree with that. And especially nowadays, there are cities that have bona fide Rishus Harabims, like New York City. Therefore, some say a different reason. And this is the Ramah. Because nowadays jewelry is very common. And women go out with jewelry even during the week. They don't only wear it on Shabbos. And therefore, and therefore we don't have this risk that a woman might take off a piece of jewelry and show it to her friend. Like back in the day. Back in the day, women only wore jewelry on Shabbos, and jewelry wasn't even common. So a woman who was zeicha to a piece of jewelry, and she wore it outside on Shabbos, she might take it off and show it to her friend. But nowadays, not negeya. So this is really the Ramah. The Ramah who said that the whole gzeira of Dilma Shalfa Machavia really doesn't apply nowadays. V'yesha kasvu, and then the Aruch HaShulchan brings down another explanation. There are those that write, the nashi didon einan maris tachshitein v'tabisein. Our women are the nashim chashuvos that we learned about earlier in Shin Gimel, who sapasnished to take off their jewelry or their rings and show it to somebody in the street. A chashuv, a woman, doesn't do that. It's beneath her dignity. Our women are nashim chashuvos. Our women, it would be beneath their dignity to take off their jewelry and show it in the street. So another reason why the gzeira of Dilma Shalfa Machavia doesn't apply. The yesh lahasber adavar, and says the Aruch HaShulchan, and I can explain this to you. Tihine besif test inspired the klila shari mitam daman dark lebepap klila isha chashuva. By the klila, the tiara, we said this svara. We said a tiara is okay. Why? Because only an isha chashuva wears it. The isha chashuva lo shalfa machavia. And a chashuva woman doesn't take off her jewelry and show it off. The nashi didan kulan chashuva, he's saying, our women are nashim chashuvas. It's beneath their dignity to show off their jewelry. And says the Aruch HaShulchan, there's another reason why it's mutter for our women to wear jewelry. Tehine, Yodua, it's very well known. Shebiyamayim, back in the day, Hayu Hanashim Yoshvais Bebesan. Back in the day, in the time of Chazal, women stayed at home. They didn't go out often. They didn't go out to the street often. Women were home. Once in a while when they went out, they went all wrapped up and covered up. V'gam lo haya lehem bate knesiyah shel nashim. And also, the shuls didn't have an Ezras Nashim. I know this. I remember hearing about this. I remember hearing the Alter Rebbetzin, Rav Moshe's Rebbetzin, Zechreinu Levracha, talking about it. The shuls didn't have an Ezras Nashim. Everybody's running. All the women are going running. I'm not knocking it, but they're going running to hear Mechias Amalek, Parsha Zohar, and to hear this, and to hear Shabbos Mavarchim. Back in the day, the shuls didn't have an Ezras Nashim. In Kain Loy Rozu as Urak Leprokim. Women didn't see their friends. They saw their friends once in a blue moon. It was rare that a woman went to visit her friend. Therefore, if a woman went for a walk on Shabbos and she actually bumped into her friend on Shabbos in the street, now there was a real bona fide chash dilma shalfa machavia. Women didn't see each other. They didn't have opportunities to see each other. So if a woman went out on Shabbos for a walk with her husband in the street and she bumped into her friend, Dilma Shalfa Machavia. But nowadays, says Yarach HaShulchan, Hanashim Holchais Harbe Tadir Berachayva Yisu B'Shvakim. Women go out all the time. V'nichnasai Zuluzu B'Bateyan. And they visit their friends in their houses. V'royes Zuluzu B'Beis HaKnesset Shal Nashim. And they see each other in the Ezes Nashim on a constant basis. Imken Memelu Sheyichayla Laharis Lo Takshiteh B'Bateyan. So if a woman wants to show off her new tennis bracelet to her friend, she doesn't have to do it in the street on Shabbos afternoon. She could do it when she goes and she visits her friend. She could do it on Tuesday in the grocery store. She could do it in shul in the Ezes Nashim. Nowadays, why on earth would a woman take off her tennis bracelet in the street on Shabbos afternoon to show it to her friend? Is there a lack of times that a woman could show her friend her new tennis bracelet? So there's b'chlal no chash of Dilma Shalfa Machavia, says the Aruch HaShulchan. V'harei anu royen b'chush. And the Aruch HaShulchan says, take a look. Shegab b'chaylu b'yom tavei noises kain. Did you ever see a woman in the street on a Tuesday or on Shavuos afternoon when you're allowed to carry? Did you ever see a woman go ahead and take off her necklace and take off her bracelet to show it to her friend in the street? So why should we suddenly be concerned that she's going to come do it Shabbos afternoon in the street? V'zehu heter nochaynu barer, says Yarach HaShulchan. This is the clearest, most obvious, and most proper heter that there could be. In a nutshell, says Yarach HaShulchan, you know why our women could go out with jewelry? Because there is no shash, dilma shalfa or machavia. It just doesn't exist. There's no such thing anymore. Nobody does it. It's not done. Nobody would do it. Okay, we'll continue. We'll finish the page. There's not much left. There's a lot of lines in the Mechaber, very little Mishnah Berurah, and it's simple. So Mir Tzashem will finish this page as part of the next chair. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah, the source of Limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh Hashanah should send Yeshua Sefuros Parnas and Shaduchim to those in need. We should be Zaychet to see the Biaskal Tzedek. B'mher V'yameinu Amen. Be well.